Hello to everyone listening to us. I am Renata, the conference host, and our today's guest is Jules Alvarado. Hello there.
Hi, thanks for having me, Renata.
Thanks for joining us. So, you are the founder of Alvarado Consulting and Treatment Group, and also the coach and the healer at Simply Healing with Jules. I known you for years because I've been following your work for years, but maybe for parents who listen to us and they are not that familiar with you as I am, would you mind to tell them something about yourself with your own words? Maybe something.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Renata. You know, the first thing that I want to say is there's nothing special about me. I am a mom who first and foremost, as a mom, recognized that there were many, many things about myself that I didn't know before I became a mom. And when you take that in the context of all the letters I had after my name and all the degrees I had achieved by the time I became a mom, you would think I would have known and been introduced to some really important, sacred experiences that would occur between a parent and a child, but I didn't. And I recognized very quickly that all the letters after my name and all the years of study and research and education did not hold a candle to becoming a mom. And in that space of learning to be the mom that I wanted to be, I grew up. I grew up as a mom as I was helping my kids grow up, and felt so isolated and alone and scared and worried at times about how to do it, that I'm grateful there are people like you who are bringing information from moms who have, you know, done this now for 30 years. My youngest is 24, my oldest is in his 30s. I think it's important that we create a safe container for the younger moms and for the parents who are raising children who maybe have been wounded by trauma or have some attachment challenges or have individual unique needs that the rest of the world doesn't always understand and can make us feel isolated and alone. And so I'm here alongside you, Renata, just to talk about what it's like to be a mom and to grow up as a mom as we parent our children, and maybe just offer some tidbits of wisdom that have been helpful for me that I've learned over the years.
That's exactly about it. I remember when I became mom myself, I felt isolated too, because I was like, I read all those books and go to all those lessons and courses online. It's so hard to be a mom. Like it's so they all tell I should remain calm. I should do a pause. I should do a break before acting. How do I do that? Because I got triggered all the time. I was like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do it right? What I'm doing wrong?
Yeah, it's really true. And this is why we started the Alvarado Consulting and Treatment Group, because there was a time during my growing up as a mom with my children that I also became a foster mom. And so we had many, many children come through our home who had been through significant complex trauma. And I have a biological son who was exposed to trauma in utero before I delivered him and right after his birth. And I was watching the relationship between me and children who had trauma bring up different experiences in me than my relationship with my other children. And so during this time, I began to explore what it was about me, my nervous system, my brain, my body, my triggers. I call triggers energetic explosions because it feels like inside of me when I'm being triggered, that's the more traditional world. I felt like I had this energy, Renata, just exploding in me. And when I did not know what to do with that energy, unfortunately, sometimes it exploded in the presence of others. But what I would say to myself is, I'm a loving mom. I'm a gentle mom. I'm a caring mom. I have these children because I have a big heart and big love. And then this energy would start to explode in me, and I couldn't understand it. And of course, the next wave would be I would feel ashamed of being angry, ashamed that I lost my temper, ashamed that I wasn't patient, ashamed that I didn't know what to say to a hurting child. And so I began to look at our nervous system, right? Not just my brain and my body and my words, but what did trigger really mean? What does energetic explosion really mean? And we come to learn that the reason we can't always be who we say we want to be is because in the human condition, we have a very powerful nervous system. And when that nervous system is impacted by our own internal or external stress, we have a lot of kids running around, we have laundry to do and dinner to make and a partner to try to keep happy and a house to keep clean. And some of us are working outside of the home as well. That sense of overwhelm sends our nervous system into these spirals that then manifest as impatience or not staying on task or not being able to pay attention gently to someone who we may love dearly, but our nervous system has us in a state of defensive protectiveness, and we can't sometimes cross that barrier. I've often said, I wished before we left the hospital, or if we have a midwife helping us deliver at home, that somebody would say to us as new moms, here are some things that are probably going to happen. And you'll be okay, and they won't last forever. And it doesn't mean you're bad, but here are some things that are probably going to happen. And I wished somebody had said to me, you're going to get impatient. You're going to lose your patience. You're going to love and still be angry. Okay, I wished someone had said to me, it's okay, Jules, you'll get through it. But they didn't. And so we, like you, started educating parents about how trauma impacts our nervous system, what attachment means between us and children, how when we get into those moments when we're overwhelmed and stressed and we start to feel ashamed, how can we just roll that back? How can we bring that back so we can stay present in the moment and not get sucked into that vortex or that whirlwind of chaos that begins to kind of percolate around us?
That's the most difficult thing, I guess, to stay calm or to come back to us and to not get triggered around when it's like chaos around. And I remember reading all those books, and they all say, like, sometimes you're gonna get angry. And it was like, sometimes? Well, it's more often than sometimes. So again, there's something wrong with you. Like, I think like no one says it like you just did, with that authenticity, like you're gonna get angry and that's okay. I mean, that's part of being human. Yeah, we are not bad. There's nothing wrong with you.
And isn't that so important to say to every parent who's listening, that you are not bad. You aren't doing things wrong. You're never on the wrong path. This experience called human life, this human condition that we chose to be born into, offers us so many opportunities to become the very best version of ourselves that we can become. And if life were easy all the time, we wouldn't grow. We would stagnate. We wouldn't learn. We wouldn't develop this capacity for unconditional love the way that we say we want to, right? We say we want to be unconditionally loving parents. Well, our kids give us an opportunity every day to practice. Every day we get to practice. What does that mean? Because when I'm angry at you, I don't feel loving. When I'm frustrated with you, I don't feel loving. When many of the foster children that we took care of for more than 20 years, out of their own woundedness, when they would lie about us or make up stories that were not true about what was happening in our home, how could I take that in that moment, in that very hard moment, and use that as an opportunity to say, Jules, even in this moment, how do you unconditionally love? And so I want to share with you just a few steps that I've begun to simplify for myself. I still use them in my 60s now. My children are grown and gone. I don't foster anymore. But there are still relationships in my life today, right, where I can feel those energetic explosions rising up in me. And I don't want to be that person. I don't want to explode. I want to be able to come back to my center and to be calm. So one of the things I think it's really important to remember is that at the most fundamental level in this sacred, mystical human body, we are a bundle of energy. The human body is really just a bundle of energy. And energy can be heavy and dark and toxic. And I think we all know what we mean by that when we're depressed, when we're anxious, when we're angry, when we're resentful, when we feel disappointed, when we're judgmental, when we're critical of ourselves or others. That energy feels heavy. It hurts our heart space, right? And we also have energy that's light. And that gives us spaciousness and room to be curious and compassionate instead of critical and competitive. And when we recognize that in our very essence, we are comprised of this energy, we can also be reminded that we move energy with our breath. The way we bring energy in is with an inhale, and the way we move energy out is with an exhale. And so if I'm in that moment of, oh, here we go again, that dark, heavy energy, and we tend to know it's heavy energy when we collapse, right? When we feel contracted, when we do that, or we're sad, or we hurt and we contract, that's a heavy energy. And in that moment, if I can recognize it, I can remind myself to bring new energy in. Big inhale, just a big inhale of energy from out here to create spaciousness where I'm contracting. And if I can hold that inhale in for just a brief second and then use a long exhale, I call it an elongated exhale, to blow out as long as I can move that energy intentionally out of my system. Now, when you're really angry in the moment, that is not easy to do, right? It's not easy just to stop and say to myself, hey, Jules, take a breath and you'll feel better, because I already feel bad. I'm already contracted. I'm already angry. And so in those moments, I have this silly practice that is actually very neurobiologically informed. It's trauma informed. It's attachment focused. It's energetically balanced. But when I'm outside of that window of tolerance, right, when I'm already beyond, hey, take a breath, then what I practice is something called stop, drop, and roll. And in those moments, Renata, now I'm in my 60s and I've had a lot of years to practice this. I know every morning when I get up that my goal is to be the best version of myself that I can be. And sometimes I'm stressed and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I feel spaciousness, sometimes I feel contracted. But my goal every morning is to be the best version of myself that I can be. And so as that energetic explosion is happening, but I'm not quite able to get that breath in. Instead, what I say to myself is just stop talking, stop arguing, stop fighting. Please stop yelling at people you love. Yelling is so harmful. Just stop. Even if I can't get the breath in, can I stop? Stop moving, stop engaging, just stop it. Don't get into the ring, just stop. And once the nervous system, right, once that primitive part of my brain has a moment to become aware of the stop, now I can drop into that breath, because now my brain will allow that regulatory process to come back online. So when we can't move into the pose or the breath or the apology or the awareness, we can always stop. And once we stop, the nervous system begins to recognize that with just a bit more safety. So as I stop, then I can drop into that breath. And I can drop into 3 or 4. Sometimes I need 10 deep breaths in and long exhales out. Sometimes my stop and drop can be for an hour. And I might need to say to somebody, I can't talk about this right now, but I will be back. I'm not abandoning you or us. This matters, but I can't do it right now. I'll be back. So sometimes the stop can be pretty quick, but the drop for me might be an hour. Recently, a drop for me was a day. And I had to say to my partner, I think we need to take a break from this conversation. I needed a day to come back to my heart so I could come back to her from my heart space, not from my head, not from my anger, not from my need to be right, which is where parents often get into the trap that we as parents are right and we need to convince our children that we're right and we know better. And I would offer to all parents, we don't always know better. Our children are their own human beings who came to this life to have their own experience. We might know how to keep them safe. We might know how to protect them, but we don't always know what's best for every human being, including our children. And so as we drop and take that space, some really miraculous things occur in the brain and the body. By the time we get to that 10th, 11th, 12th exhale, your brain is now moving into what we call emotional regulation. And many of you have heard of this process. We can talk about it and write about it and read about it, but getting to it is a practice. And it's like if I want muscles in my arms, I have to lift weights every day. So is emotional regulation. It's a practice that I invite you to be really gentle with yourself about. We practice stop, drop, and roll. So the drop, as we elongate that exhale, allows our brain to come back into that parasympathetic side of our nervous system. And once we can move our nervous system into what's known as the parasympathetic setting, we begin to rest and reset our energy. And so now our energy comes back down. We regulate our energy and our emotions. And when we can stop and drop long enough, then we can roll back into relationship. I try not to roll back into relationship until I really feel that drop. Have I dropped in? Have I landed back here? Am I still here or here? Am I still ready to defend? Because then I'm not ready to roll back into relationship. Do I still need to prove that I'm right? Then I'm not ready to roll back into relationship. Do I still need to be seen or heard? Because I have a little girl in me that's been wounded too, and she needs attention. And if that part of me still needs attention, I need to give that to myself. I need my adult self to wrap that little girl self up and help her feel safe before I come back to my child or my partner. So stop, drop, and roll is just a kind of an easy way to remember that we don't have to fight. We don't have to let their fight be our fight. We don't have to let their trauma become our trauma. We don't have to let their screaming or yelling at us become our screaming or yelling at them. We don't have to let their fight become our fight. But in order to do that, we have to understand how to bring our nervous system back online. So those elongated exhales, and if we can't get there, then we can practice stop, drop, and roll. Just an easy way to bring us back into relationship, easier way to bring us back into relationship.
So what you are saying is that instead of going outside with what's happening outside of me, I'm going inwards. And when I drop and I stop and then drop, I'm trying to connect with my inner light, my inner best version of myself, trying to connect with my heart. And then I feel like I'm connected, I am at home. Then only I can go back to the relationship or the person or my children or the situation, whatever it is.
I love your metaphor of then I'm home, right? Because Renata, if we can land back home, which is in our heart space, if we can land back home, now I have a safe home to offer to my children. But when I'm angry and I'm defensive, even if they've done something really wrong, even if I know that even if we come across an ethical or moral or an issue of integrity and my child has crossed that line, and I can get really angry because maybe, let's say they've hurt another child. Let's say they've hurt someone else in the family. That's when we get really revved up, right? But when I can remind myself that I can come home, I can land back in my heart space, my home, now I can create a safe haven for this child, even when I'm angry at them, to teach them how to do it differently. Because if I stay in my anger, I become punitive. And now I'm just hurting my child for hurting someone else, which makes no sense at all. How do we teach a child by hurting them? If they've hurt someone else and we want to bring them back to love, a punishment that hurts them is counterintuitive. It doesn't help them create this safe space at home either. So I love your metaphor for home. When I can come home and relate from my heart space, I can create a safe home for you. And once and only once safety is reestablished between me and my child, would I attempt to teach a lesson, right? Because a stressed out brain can't learn. So if a child is still in the throes of whatever was going on, or if there's something between me and my child, that's got to be regulated before I can teach the lesson. Once there's regulation back in the relationship, now we can talk about rules. Now we can talk about rewards. Now we can talk about discipline. Now I can help my child learn the lesson, but not until we're back into safe relationship, safely at home.
And while we are doing this, while we go inwards, we might discover things about ourselves that we don't like, what triggers, what makes us scary, what we don't like about ourselves. And it's so much easier to not look at it and find some external distraction, because it scares us. And I told you just before the interview, one of your newsletter was about how to sit with what is. Like, how do I stay with what I discover in myself, even and especially if I don't like it?
Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the most painful experiences is to see in ourselves something that we're ashamed of. And, one of the hardest lessons for me as a parent, but one of my greatest awakenings in my human condition, is how much shame we carry around in our bodies and in our nervous system and in our very souls, the essence of who we are. And when we don't have a way of regulating that, when we don't have a way of calming that, when we don't have a way of soothing that rampage, and maybe it's because we didn't learn it from our own parents. Maybe some of us had very angry parents, and that character trait has been built in us. Maybe some of us had parents who didn't pay attention to us in the way we needed. And so we've learned to take care of ourselves, and now we're taking care of children, and that sets these energetic explosions off, and we become angry because we still want to be taken care of. Maybe we had parents who hurt us. Maybe we had parents who we felt abandoned or rejected or neglected by, and maybe we had parents that we don't feel any of those things about. This is something that I've learned. It doesn't take a childhood of complex trauma to create us as parents who struggle. It's hard to be a parent, but there are a lot of things from our childhood that impact that. And so when we are reminded of those as we become parents and they begin to rise up in us, looking at those is really painful. I remember when I first recognized that being angry at my child for something they did was so much easier than looking at what I had done. I could be angry at them, but to sit in my own shame at the way I had reacted, that was really hard to look at. And so I began to say to myself, and then I began to hold circles with other parents. And I'm going to give you some information. It's a free offering once a month. We bring parents from all over the world to sit in circle with us. And we do this work together to support parents the way you are as well. And there's no cost to it. It's like you, it's my way of saying you don't have to be alone. But I remember when I started saying to myself, Renata, what would happen, Jules, if you just sat here? What would happen if in all this rage inside of you, if you just sat here? Would you explode? Would you blow up? Would you cry forever? Would you get so angry that you would leave? Would you hurt somebody? Would you break something? Would anybody be able to stand you? Would anybody still like you? Would anybody tolerate you? Right? And then as I sat with it, of course, what comes up underneath that is this deep fear that somehow we are inherently wrong or bad, or there's something wrong with us. And in 30 years of doing this work, I can tell you without a doubt that 100% of my clients have this underneath somewhere. Something's wrong with me. Something's not good enough about me. Something's broken in me. I'm not worthy. I don't have value. And boy, if there's a place for that to come out, it will be when you're parenting. And so when I get into stop, as I'm moving into my drop, I will say to myself, sit with it, Jules. And then I will say to myself, what is it? What is it that I'm sitting with? Sit with it. Sit with what? Can I name it? And I would encourage any parent who's listening to this to remember the last time you were really upset about something. You can feel it in your body. Where do you feel it in your body? Can you put your hand on it when it's happening? Can you allow it some nurturing from you in your body when it's happening? Can you sit with it? And then can you name it? Does it have a name? Sometimes it has a texture. Sometimes it has a smell. Sometimes it has a color. Sometimes we have a sense of it. And as we get to know these parts of ourselves deeper, then often what happens is we begin to connect the dots between what's coming up in us and our own histories. And we learn that parenting happens from the inside out. Parenting is an inside job because we become the parent we want to be in our inner landscape before we manifest that externally. But if no one gives us the option of looking inside, as you're doing, if no one gives us even a thought to be curious about what that means, that parenting is an inside job. We have to go inward bound to create who we are as a parent. If no one says that to us, how would we know it? Like, my parents were amazing, but they never said to me, go inward bound. My parents didn't teach me how to be in touch with how I feel and my body and my own essence. They didn't know that themselves. And so I encourage us when we're sitting with it to find it in your body, sit with it. My heart hurts. My stomach feels like it's going to explode. I have knots in my back. My throat gets tight. And to put your hand on it, name it, and then here's the hardest part, honor it. Honor it. It's trying to protect you from something. Our nervous system, often as children, learns to protect us from fear, from threat, from wounds, from danger. And that very adaptive part of our nervous system stays alive in us. So then we become adults and we have this little girl that's still trying to protect me from something that happened 50 years ago, even though right now I'm safe, but my nervous system does not always know that. So if I can honor that adaptive little girl in me, just quiet her down, just thank you for being there. I've got it. I'm okay right now. You can take a rest. I'll come back to you, and honor that part of ourselves. Then we can, in your words, because I loved your metaphor, land back in our heart space, create some spaciousness for that little girl to rest, for our heart to open, so that we create a safe home for our child or our partner or our sibling or our parent, whoever it might be. This is how we work to become the best version of ourselves that we can be every day.
And sometimes parents say, I don't feel my body. I can't find it. I don't know where it is. I just feel nothing. Why does that happen?
Yeah. And, I say to parents often, what does it feel like to feel nothing? Describe nothing to me. If you can sense nothingness, where do you sense the nothingness? And let's just start there. Let's honor that. When we have been exposed to trauma at certain stages of development, the human nervous system is designed to protect us. And part of the way that it does that when we're little children and we feel threatened is we have this cascade of chemicals that flood our brain and our body, and it kicks our nervous system up into that fight, flight, freeze state that we're so familiar with. And when we've lived in a nervous system that's fighting or running or freezing to survive, the nervous system sets its what we call a homeostatic state, a state that becomes normal, a state that we become familiar with. And as children, if we become familiar with protecting and defending ourselves, our nervous system can get stuck there, if you will. And then we grow up and we become adults and our nervous system is still stuck there. And this is why I think it's so important, Renata, for the message to be that there's nothing wrong with you. If you're listening to this after you have just obliterated your child yelling and screaming, I'm not saying if you've hit them or abused them in a physical way, that's a different conversation. But if you have lost your patience, if you've been screaming, if you've been yelling, and you're listening to us right now, you're okay. You're doing what your nervous system has taught you how to do. Take what you're learning in these workshops. Take what you're learning as you watch this program over a few days and practice them. Your adaptive little girl or little boy or little self is doing what they've learned how to do. You can learn to love that part of you so that part of you calms down in your inner landscape, so that you manifest a different external landscape. So we create safety and acceptance for the people who we love. This won't last forever. Trauma does not have to be a life sentence for you. It hurts, it's confusing, it's scary, it's terrifying. Reach out and talk to someone. There are ways that you can learn, that you are learning in this program, to calm your own nervous system. There's one more thing I want to say about parents who say, I don't feel it. I don't feel anything. What I say to you is, I believe you. I know that you don't. There were times I didn't. It was too scary to feel it. My nervous system knew that if I felt it all at once, it would be too overwhelming. And I had laundry to do and dinner to cook. And I had to get my kids to school, and I was trying to keep a marriage together and, keep the house halfway clean and go to work. And so my nervous system knew that if I felt all of those energetic explosions at once, I might fall apart. I might cry for days. I might get crazy. I might go insane if I felt it all. And so I learned with a very supportive group of people, slowly to learn to be in touch with my body, to let my body come back to life. And you can do that too. And you're learning some of that in here. If you need more, reach out for a trauma therapist. Reach out for somebody who can help you with yoga, with breathing. Sometimes we just start with that. Any of the somatic practices, creative art, dance, music. There are ways that we can help you get back in touch with your body, that you don't have to tell anybody your story yet, as you slowly come back into the present moment. So know that this doesn't last forever, and there are ways that we can help you come back into feeling slowly, little bits at a time, so it feels safe for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jules. You are so far away, and yet I can feel you. And that's the most lovely feeling. While you talk, I can feel loved. And you can do it from so far away through this screen. But I mean, you are so generous and so loving. And thank you for that.
You're welcome. It comes from a world of hurt. So for parents who are watching me, I haven't always been here. I've been in your place. We can take those wounds and we can learn to transmute them into wisdom. We can soften up even when we feel really hard. And I'm grateful that you're providing this program, Renata. So thank you for having me here. I feel honored.
And thanks for your offering. I'm gonna add a link where people can join your circle once a month.
Perfect. I'll send it to you. Thank you.
Thank you.